And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it, and that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. Tonight we're joined by my guest, Giano. Thanks for coming on here and talking to me.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. This is great. I'm happy to be here.
Would you like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Giano Cromley. I am originally from Montana. I grew up there. And I currently live in Chicago, where I'm an English professor. And I just had this new novel come out, American Mythology, which is kind of follows the story of two Bigfoot hunters as they go on one of their last expeditions. So that's kind of what I'm kind of working on right now. It's just come out.
The part of being from Montana, I am jealous because
Yes, you should be. I will just say you should be.
I interviewed someone recently that's also from Montana, and I said the same thing. I'm jealous because I want to go to Montana. That's one of the states that I haven't been to that I would like to go and visit. So,
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, Montana is just beautiful. One of the things I say to my friends here in Chicago is that I will always have mountains in my blood, which just means whenever I go back, which is fairly regularly. In fact, I'll be heading back there tomorrow. Um, I just can't wait to get back in the mountains, back into the forests, the nature. It's really just unmatched.
you're out of Chicago right now?
Yeah, I live in Chicago now,
Okay.
but my folks are still in Billings, which is where I grew up, and I get back there probably now about 4 times a year.
Nice.
So yeah.
I was just in Chicago for an event a little over a month ago, and
Oh,
we were just on the outskirts of Chicago last weekend searching for something that my wife had been wanting, some kind of a bag,
oh,
and the closest place I could find was Cabela's up there. I think it's in
oh.
is it Hammond?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hammond, Indiana is like
Yeah.
right outside Chicago. That's
Yeah.
what people don't realize is Indiana. I mean, it's just in fact, Indiana from where I live on the south side is like a 5 minute drive from
Right.
here.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
about 2 hours to get up there to Chicago for me. So it's not terribly far. I'm just in north central Indiana.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Yeah. Yeah. I love Chicago. It's great, but I mean, Montana will definitely always be my home for sure.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to claim Chicago if I had Montana.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
me.
Exactly. That's the first point on my resume
Mhm.
for sure.
So you wrote this novel about these explorers searching for Bigfoot.
hmm
What led you to want to write something about that?
Well, first off, I've had just a lifelong fascination with Bigfoot. And I mean, that goes back to, everyone of a certain age has kind of their gateway into Bigfoot world, right? Like if you're about my age, it's the TV show In Search Of. If you're maybe a little bit younger, then it could be Harry and the Hendersons or, um, what was that? Unsolved Mysteries. That's another one that got a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people hooked. I think younger generations now it might be Finding Bigfoot, but for me it was In Search Of. The Leonard Nimoy show,
Right.
and just seeing that episode with that they had about Bigfoot just kind of lit my brain on fire. And so ever since then, I've just been fascinated by Bigfoot, and just kind of would kind of anytime something would come up that was Bigfoot related, I was just all I couldn't wait to devour it. But honestly, I think what kind of changed it from, just maybe a casual interest, to kind of a more pronounced fascination, or more of kind of a fixation, I guess you might say, was I had a Bigfoot encounter in 2014 in Western Michigan. Um, it's interesting. I don't often think of Michigan as Bigfoot country. Although that was, having grown up in Montana, I didn't know much about Michigan. But now that I'm here in Chicago, and I've spent some time in Michigan, I can attest to the fact that it is a very unexplored place,
Right.
with vast stretches of forests and wilderness.
The further north you go, it's even more so, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Upper Peninsula is basically just completely pristine. I mean, and I've been up there, so I know it is truly just completely unexplored, essentially. But my encounter took place in an area called the Manistee National Forest, which is in Western Michigan. And for those who aren't familiar with that particular spot, it's a very if you've ever been in it, it just has like kind of a very old, very dark feel to it. Um, and it was 2014, and my wife and I we needed to get out of the city, so we did an Airbnb, and the place that we rented was literally called Cabin in the Woods, and that's essentially what it was. Um, and this cabin, like, kind of backed up against the Manistee National Forest. So we'd spent a week there, and we had been, hiking and exploring, and, just doing all the things that you do when you're on vacation. And it was the last night we were there, and we were out in back of the cabin, and we had a fire going in the fire pit, and it was my wife and I, and we had our two dogs with us. And, we were just chatting that it was getting late. The fire was getting dark, or, lower. And in the distance, we heard a pack of coyotes howling or yipping, right? And which is, very common wherever you are,
right,
in the country. So that, and I'm very attuned to that. I grew up in the backwoods of Montana, camping in the backcountry in Montana. So to me, that was just a very normal occurrence. And then out of nowhere, this sound came out of the forest. And it was, the only way I can describe it was somewhere between a howl and a yell, right? So like animal and human. And it was really just kind of a combination of both. And it started really low, and it raised in pitch and volume for, had to be a good 10 seconds, right? And I've heard pretty much anything that you could possibly hear in the forests around here. Uh, and I'd never heard anything like this. And it was really a strong sound, and it was enough to just kind of stop our conversation. And then it died out. And a few seconds later, from the other side of us, the same sound happened. But it was a different creature, but the same type of sound. Started low, rose in pitch and volume, and again, it was the kind of thing that just felt like it was like jangling your soul. Like it penetrated to the core.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the forest kind of seemed to get quiet. After the second one stopped, there was the sound of a coyote screeching in acute distress. Just I mean, a death screech, right? And I mean, it was unmistakable. And after that, there were these low kind of guttural sounds that we heard. Now, the final part of this story, or the part that kind of really kind of pushed me over the edge in terms of, thinking what this could possibly be, is one of our dogs with us was a Great Pyrenees. He was a rescue from downstate Illinois, and he had been, a working dog. And Great Pyrenees, for those who don't know, are livestock guarding dogs. So their whole kind of affect is they're very chill dogs. They are calm to the, just beyond belief. And the whole point of that is that they go out to into the mountains, into the fields with the sheep, and they stay calm because they don't want to disturb the sheep. And they basically sleep out there at night with the sheep. But they have a very finely attuned aggression threshold, like a sensation for danger. So they only alert when they know that danger is there. So after the howls and the coyote screech and the guttural sounds, our Great Pyrenees went ballistic, started barking and snapping and lunging at the tree line. Fortunately, we had his leash on, so he wasn't able to kind of go into the trees. But I had never seen him react that way before or since. So this was a unique, and we had taken him, into Montana. When we'd gone on our trips to visit home in Montana, we'd gone hiking, camping, all that stuff in Montana. So he had been in those situations before, and I'd never seen him react that way. So that really kind of spoke to me of him being able to sense some kind of unique danger in that moment, or unique threat. After that all kind of happened and we were able to control him on the leash, we went inside to the cabin and kind of battened down the hatches, because that was pretty much, at that point, we were both really terrified of what we had just heard. And I'd like to say I was brave enough to go out and explore, but honestly, that was not the case. But that experience really kind of solidified to me the idea that there are things out there that we don't understand, that we haven't, been able to verify or prove, but they're out there.
Have you spoken to anyone that's within the Bigfoot communities, like after this, and like told them what had happened, and what did they tell you?
I hadn't really before this book came out,
Okay.
but I did. I did post this, like that kind of story on, back in the day it was Tumblr. So I posted kind of just that, what happened on Tumblr, and it was really interesting to me. And I'm not sure if this might be what you're getting at, Brandon, but um, uh, I noticed a couple people in their comments made mention of the Michigan Dogman. And I had never heard of that before in my life. Um, and really didn't know much about it until kind of, I would say, the last 5 years, as I've been working on this book. Just I've just been doing a lot of research on Bigfoot in general, and then that's kind of allowed me to come across the stories of the Dogman, because the Manistee National Forest is kind of, by a lot of people, considered to be ground zero for Dogman sightings.
I wasn't necessarily leaning towards the Dogman, just because
Okay.
that's when people think of Michigan, that is one of the first things that happens. But what I was going to say is, with the noises and everything and the way they were acting, I'm not a Bigfoot expert or expert at anything, to be honest. I don't think there actually are experts, by the way. That's just,
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Anyone who says they are is not.
right. But I do feel like there are people that are knowledgeable, and some of the actions and everything to me, it sounded like they were communicating with each other. If that's two different like creatures making those noises, and then the way your dog was acting,
Yeah.
it's almost like they were communicating with each other, but they also wanted you to know that they were there.
Yeah, it's really strange when you think about it. If you want to think about like a prey activity, right? Like um you would certainly think they would be communicating if they're kind of doing some kind of group or at least pair hunting. Um, but the volume of it would seem to imply that they were doing something else beyond that, right? Like that they wanted to let us know we were there. Um, to what end? I'm not sure. Maybe the end was just wanting us to to go inside and get out of there.
You're invading their
But
territory.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And this was, it wasn't the most. I mean, even though it was called Cabin in the Woods, it wasn't completely isolated. But we definitely didn't have neighbors too close. So it felt like essentially, also because it was kind of on either side of us, it felt like it was probably more like it directed toward us specifically. At least that was the impression that we got from it.
Do you, it's hard to understand like the questions that I'm about to say, but like even it's hard for me to explain it. But do you feel like these things were in sort of a threatening mode or not? Because I feel like if they were trying to threaten you, they could have done a lot more. You
Yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think that they were in a threatening mode toward us. Obviously, that poor coyote
Right.
probably feels otherwise. But no, I think probably, if I had to guess, it was uh, a warning of sorts to us that, kind of this is going to happen. Um, and we don't want you around for it, but also not like a direct threat, like we're about to come at you kind of thing. You see what I mean? So it was
Yeah.
just kind of a warning, kind of just an alert, I guess you would say, as opposed to an aggressive uh, move on their part.
Now, the next day, did you happen to try and go out and look for anything, or did you just kind of not look?
Honestly, no. It's the forest around there is it's a lot of kind of deciduous trees. There's a lot of kind of leaf litter on the ground, and so it wasn't really a great spot that would be conducive to kind of footprints or tracking, as far as I could tell. I should have probably gone out and investigated a little bit more, but I mean, I will be honest and say that even by the morning, there was still some kind of residual fear lingering afterwards.
Maybe I'm weird, but I would always be the curiosity type person.
I
But
I know, and honestly, I really regret that. I've thought about it a lot afterwards. I'm like, why didn't I just go and look a little bit? Um, you know, it, in fairness, the distance from where we were, I would probably place it at anywhere between maybe, and again, this is purely a guesstimate, between 25 to 50 yards on either side of us for both of the howls. Which when you start to think about like an untrailed forest, that is, like, once you kind of take about 10 steps out of the clearing, like you're kind of just engulfed by trees. So I do think it probably would have been pretty hard to find too much sign of anything. Although I do regret probably not going out and checking to see if I could find something.
if it's overgrown and everything else, and that's where I get hesitant because I don't feel like getting snakes and bugs and all sorts of other.
Yeah, and poison ivy too.
Right.
Like I'm just kind of, and ticks, and it just kind of gets gnarly in Michigan for
Right.
sure.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
I I can handle being chased by a Bigfoot or a dog man or whatever, I guess. I'm not worried about that. But if I get like a bug on me, I want to freak. It's the little things apparently that get me.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I am. My cousin often makes fun of my hypersensitive reactions to when a bug lands on me. So I can appreciate that.
so off topic, but kind of on topic. We were in Alabama a couple years ago, and we were playing mini golf, and a ladybug landed on the. I think it was the club that my daughter was using, and she was 3 at the time, and the blood curdling scream that she let out, all because of a ladybug. I was like, I don't even do that.
Yeah. Where did she get that
Right.
from?
Yeah.
You
No,
asked.
no idea where she gets that from.
Yeah,
But
yeah. That's
no.
hilarious. Yeah, yeah.
So you wrote this book, and it is called American Mythology.
Mhm.
You want to talk a little bit about it?
Sure. I wanted to, like I said, I knew I always wanted to write a novel about Bigfoot, and I really wasn't sure how I wanted to approach it. I tried multiple times, and I think a lot of people who are really into Bigfoot, you know, understand that, a lot of the books that are out there, obviously there's some great nonfiction books, right? If you want to just learn about it. But if you want some escapism, if you want a story about Bigfoot, I think they often tend to fall into one of maybe three categories. One is kind of children's stuff, like kids stuff, kind of like Harry and the Hendersons. Um, and then there's kind of the like kind of horror genre where it's very kind of straight, kind of blood curdling horror. Um, and then the third genre is kind of goofy, kind of almost, I would say, like mockery of the whole Bigfoot phenomenon, right? And none of those were really what I wanted to write about. What I wanted to do was write like kind of an honest to goodness like adventure story about Bigfoot, but with characters that were meaningful, that the readers could really kind of sympathize with and get behind and root for. So I really, in some ways, I kind of, you know, I read a lot of kind of old school 70s novels that were these kind of adventure type stories. Um, that kind of really just had like a propulsive plot with good characters, which I think are books that often aren't really written anymore, or at least you don't see them very much anymore. So I think of this as kind of a throwback a little bit to kind of good characters. I think a really kind of propulsive story that's engaging and really kind of deals with the topic of Bigfoot like in an honest and like really kind of thoughtful way, right? It's not making fun of anybody that in terms of their beliefs. It's dealing with it in an honest way. And so that was kind of really how I settled on this book. And so I'm pretty happy with how it turned out.
How long did it take you to write it?
That's a good question. I started the first draft of this in February 2019. And I finished the first draft in late 2021. So it took me almost 2 years to write the first draft. And then it was about twice as long as it is now. And it was decent, but I knew it needed a lot of work. And so I applied for this fellowship with Stony Brook University that kind of helps. It's a novel incubator. And over the next year, I worked I did two kind of full revisions on it. I cut it down almost in half in size and changed the story fairly significantly. And then after that, I was able to get an agent who loved it, but wanted to make some changes as well. So I made some more changes. And then I sold it to Doubleday in April 2023. So 2023? No, 2024. And so I have been working on revisions. I mean, I started it in 2019, so it's been a 6-year process. It's changed a lot, but I think the DNA from that very first draft is still intact.
I got a copy right here, and we talked off air that I have not had the chance to read it yet, but I have skimmed through it, and it's looking like it's almost 300 pages. And I think that's what intimidates me because I don't,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot for me to read in my spare time when I'm not doing this or whatever else I have to do in life.
Yeah,
But
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will warn you though, Brandon, that if you do start it, you may not be able to put it down.
that there's only been a few books that I've ever done that with. So
Well,
if this
I'm
is one of them,
issuing the challenge.
if this is one of them, I'll give you 100% props for it because
Okay, all right, good, good.
I'm not an avid reader of books. So
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
have certain ones here that I bought that I wanted to read and I've read them,
yeah,
but there's other ones that I also have that I've not had the opportunity to read and they've been sitting here for 2 years now. I was like,
sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. Everyone's got that to be read list, right? That's
Right.
just kind of that stack of books.
Mhm.
It's really interesting. I think most people who are really into Bigfoot, the books that they read are the nonfiction books, right? The ones that we all know, the Meldrums and those that are kind of very fascinating and very kind of scientific, or else they have the eyewitness accounts. Um, I don't think there are a lot of. I can think of one, Max Brooks's novel Devolution, which is a Bigfoot kind of novel. It's very much in the horror genre. He's best known for writing World War Z.
That was actually one of the books that I read all the way through.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah. And so I think mine isn't that kind of straight horror that his is. Mine has more of a like a creeping horror. But I think it's definitely that was one of the comparisons that they had used when we were marketing it. Um, I think what's interesting, and I mentioned this to someone else recently. I think there's a disconnect though between what the publishing world, like at least in the kind of New York publishing world, thinks people want and versus what people really want to read. Um, I had my agent went on submission with this novel, which means she sent it out to a ton of different editors in New York. And when you go through that process, it's highly nerve wracking, and obviously there are more failures than acceptances, right, or rejections than acceptances. And my agent asked me, well, do you want to see the pass notes? And the pass notes are basically what the people who say no, they don't want to buy it. What did they say about it? And I said, sure, tell me what they say. And a lot of them were pretty generic responses, but one of them really stood out to me, which the editor said, um, I don't think people who are into Bigfoot, he said, I think this is really well written. He said, but I think people who are into Bigfoot won't really appreciate good writing. And I think people who appreciate good writing won't really appreciate the Bigfoot stuff, which I found to be just wildly like patronizing to people who are into Bigfoot and just kind of really miscalculating what people would be interested in reading. Fortunately, the editor who did end up buying the book was really into it. He goes camping in the Pacific Northwest every year, so he's kind of fully immersed in that culture. And he's been great to work with. He really helped me make the book a better book. But it was just fascinating. I think a lot of people don't understand or don't appreciate how much people who are into Bigfoot would actually kind of appreciate a good story about it.
Not to insult any of the Bigfoot people out there, because I know there's a lot that listen, but I kind of understand, I guess, people's hesitations because, like, even with this show, like, they don't want to hear me talking. They want to hear the guest and the
Hmm.
experiences they had. And a lot of the community that I'm aware of, they want authenticity. They
Yeah.
want the real encounters. They want to hear that stuff. So if you're
Yeah.
bringing in something that's like one, but it's not 100% true, I can see where someone would be turned off by it just because that's not what they're wanting. But it
Mm.
doesn't mean what you've done is wrong or bad. Like, it's probably really good. But that's why I'm giving the opportunity to people to come on here and talk about things, because I myself was never comfortable talking with people. So why am I doing a podcast? You got to come outside of that. So for me, it's like, come outside that shell, check out this book. I bet you'll like it.
Mhm. Yeah. No, it is really hard to kind of come out of that shell, right? To leave that comfort zone for sure.
Now,
Absolutely.
it's definitely one of those things, because I've had other people on here that have had books too, and for some reason I get hate messages from people, which anyone that does podcasts, we get those all the time. Someone
Yeah.
always has something to complain about. But for generally, when you have people that aren't on here just talking for like an hour and a half about what happened to them, some listeners feel that they need to let me know that they didn't like it.
Mm. Mhm.
But, and not to insult anyone again, but this is my podcast, so I do what I do. I'm not
Yeah.
like, it's just one of those things. So
Yeah.
when it comes to Bigfoot and cryptids in general, everyone gets the same question from a lot of people, like, what are they? What do you think they could be? Where do they live? All this other stuff. But in your opinions, why are we not 100% sure what Bigfoot are?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. The I think during as we just noted, it took me a long time to write this book. And I think during the course of writing it, to me, it was in many ways kind of a journey of belief as well, like
Mm-hmm.
personally. Um, I think probably when I first started out, I was kind of very much in the flesh and blood category of believer. And I think I've moved more toward, what people would frequently disparagingly call the woo category. But I think that there's like kind of a big asterisk that kind of belongs on that because I think that, Arthur C. Clarke, the very famous science fiction writer, has this rule that he would frequently cite, which is any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that makes a lot of sense in the science fiction realm. If 100 years ago someone were to pull out an iPhone and show someone what it was, that they would think that they're a wizard or some kind of warlock or whatever, right? Um, but I think if you look at it in terms of kind of, we think that we know that everything, we understand all the science that there is to understand. But honestly, we barely understand even just a sliver of it. I was watching this show the other day where they were looking for the remains of a body, and they brought in some cadaver dogs. And I started kind of researching cadaver dogs, or just kind of rabbit holing on that. And I realized that, or I found out that cadaver dogs can actually like find the remains of bodies that have been buried for hundreds of years, if not longer. And that, in fact, if a plant grows up, like if its roots grow through a body that's buried in the ground, they can actually smell the body in the plant itself, right? Which we can explain with the science we understand, but if you kind of just take a step back from that and look at it, you think that is practically magical. That seems just incomprehensibly amazing when you look at it at its face. This animal could recognize something that's been buried hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And so I think it's not beyond the scope of possibility that Bigfoot is a creature that has skills or capabilities that we just are not able to understand. And so for us, we might say, well, that's woo, that's magic. But in fact, it's just science that we don't know yet. And obviously, history, you don't have to look very far back or, very hard to see, to find history where we believed something was categorically accurate scientifically. And in fact, we found out the complete opposite was true, or that there was just far more complexity to it than we realized. That happens all the time. So I don't think it's too far fetched to believe that Bigfoot has capabilities that we don't understand, and that those abilities help it to kind of elude us in all the ways that it has.
Right. That's kind of where I feel about it too. I don't know 100% obviously what they are or if they're even real because I've never seen one.
Yeah.
But I believe the people that have legitimately seen something,
Yeah.
but I don't know what that could be. And it doesn't make sense. You start looking into it from a scientific standpoint. One of my best friends is a total flesh and blood person.
Mm-hmm.
But then you hear all these other stories about the strangeness that happens with Bigfoot, and then that leads you to more questions. Like, and then where do they go? How do they disappear? Why
Mm-hmm.
are there no bodies? Like, there's so much out there that remains unknown that it makes you wonder if there is something more to them than what there is. And I don't want to say like interdimensional that gets tossed around, but like maybe there is some sort of a weird supernatural element to them.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a supernatural element that, again, like we just don't understand how we don't understand how energy works, right?
Exactly.
Like how energy can imprint itself and react, right? So, again, yeah, I agree with you. That we to us that all feels paranormal, right? Ghosts feel paranormal, but maybe if we understood how consciousness actually worked, we would be like, oh yeah, that's just a scientifically verified fact. We understand this now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's I think Bigfoot in many ways is kind of a measure of how comfortable we are embracing uncertainty, right? You talked about your friend who is absolutely certain it's a flesh and blood creature, right? And you'll obviously meet people who are absolutely certain that the opposite is true. And as you said, no one really knows. If anyone says that they know,
Where's the proof?
yeah, I mean, exactly. And I think it's okay. And this is what I find really interesting. I mean, I don't consider myself necessarily a part of the Bigfoot community, but I've researched it extensively. Like I've watched all the shows, all the documentaries, all the podcasts, all of it. I've read all the books. And it seems to me that everyone is super eager to kind of erase their uncertainty by saying, oh, this X is exactly correct and nothing else could possibly be correct, right? And I think that's a kind of a counterproductive way of approaching something that we all have to admit is unknown, is a mystery still. I think it's better to kind of approach it with a truly open mind, and say, we don't know. Let's see if we can find out. Hopefully, we find the answers,
Mm-hmm. That is the one thing I wish we could all agree on, but there's a lot of people within the community that just can't agree on a whole lot of anything.
I know. I think that was a line in my book where one of the characters said the one consistent quality of the Bigfoot community is that no one can ever agree with anyone. It's the one consistency is disagreement about all manner of things. And the two main characters in my book, they kind of represents the two main divides in that community. Virgil is a committed aper, subscribes to the relict hominid theory, and Jute is far more in the woo camp. So I tried to kind of capture that in these two best friends who happen to also just disagree about this kind of fundamental concept.
At the end of the day, all I know is I think there's something out there, and I think anyone listening can agree that there's probably something out there, but maybe someday we can figure out what it is. But until we can all put our egos and stuff aside and work together, I don't know how that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, as you said earlier, there just are too many reports, too many eyewitness accounts, experiences, and we all know, I'm sure a fair number are misidentifications,
Right.
honest mistakes,
Yep.
right? Bears, moose, I think they can both really be deceptive when you see them through the trees. Obviously, some are hoaxes or pranks, although I think that's a smaller number than people often suspect. But if one of them is true, if one of these eyewitness cases is true, then it's time to rewrite the science books and the history books. And so I just don't think that all of them can be wrong. I don't think all of them fall into those other two categories.
There have been people who recently posting a bunch of mangy bear pictures to claim this
Mm,
is what people are seeing as Dogman.
okay.
And 100% I can see where it could be misconstrued to be a Dogman, like especially at nighttime.
Mm.
But I don't see how someone cannot understand what a bear is and a canine. Like I get it, like physical, like the shape, I guess, of the head and the ears, maybe. Like, but usually bears are bulkier. So
Y-
if you see something like that, you're not going to think it's a dog. But, and this is strange, but people have claimed kangaroo for those
That
types of things. I was like,
that they can't. There are wild kangaroos that are being mistaken as dogmen.
yes, I've seen that here too. That people have been reporting that they think kangaroos have been what's actually being reported as dogman. I was like, I didn't know we had kangaroos just
Yeah,
running around here wildly.
yeah. Well, Brandon, I think it might be even more unlikely that there are kangaroos in Michigan than there are dogmen. So, I mean, I guess pick your poison on that one. I've never heard that. And also it's fascinating, but also very strange.
Yes.
As with what you said about bears, um, you know, they don't move like canines.
Mm-mm.
They just have a different gait and a different, way of moving. Like that's why I think sometimes people can mistake a bear for a Bigfoot because they have a more of a kind of a lumbering gait, kind of a lumbering way they move, which is completely unlike the way a canine would move, like utterly different. And I think just to the larger point of what you're saying, where people want to say like, oh, you didn't see a dog man, you saw a kangaroo, which I just find hilarious. But uh, I think most people will try to explain away something they see with a normal creature,
Right.
right?
Yep.
If you saw something weird in the forest, your instinct would be to say, okay, is that a bear? Is that a coyote? Is that a bobcat, a mountain lion, maybe, depending on where you are? Um, I think maybe the last thing you would probably go to is a dog man, right? Like, like these are people who have likely exhausted all other explanations for what they saw, before they settled on this idea. I'm excluding kangaroos because I don't think anyone in Michigan is thinking that maybe that was a kangaroo that they saw because that seems ridiculous. But I love the idea that there's a crypto kangaroo somewhere around here, but I don't believe it.
Well, I'm pretty sure it was Minnesota. I interviewed someone last year and they saw something that resembled what was to look like a smaller kangaroo. And I'm pretty
Oh,
sure that later on they said, and this was a few years later, but there was an accident. Someone had ran over it. I thought was a wallaby,
Oh,
which is like as someone's little pet or something that got out or something.
okay.
So I could see.
So that's different.
Yeah.
Okay. So I thought you were saying someone said they saw a dog man and then
Yes, but
someone kind of posted a comment saying that was a kangaroo.
no, but there's
Like,
been people online claiming that a lot of these mistaken identities of Dogman were kangaroos, and that like there's a lot of people that have been going that route apparently that they think. I was like, maybe in Australia, but I
yeah,
don't think so.
certainly in Australia. Absolutely. I mean, unless there's like a kind of a Minnesota kangaroo farm that we don't know about that's got like bad fencing.
Yeah. So
Um,
I have no idea, but I understand people's rationale of wanting to explain away the unexplainable. They have to find some sort of logical way, and to me, that doesn't sound very logical either, but that's what we do.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I was talking about people's kind of comfort with doubt, right? And how that kind of plays into the the factions in the Bigfoot world, but it also goes to the same people who are kind of rationalist materialists who think that any possibility that there are unknown things out there is just absurd, right? Like that's just another way of dealing with doubt, of kind of finding a box for where they can put it and then just putting it on a shelf and ignoring it, right? Like that's just another way, but it's equally unproductive in my view.
I just don't know how people get to this extent of completely not taking what people are saying. I'm not saying believe everybody, but at least give them the benefit of the doubt. Instead of wanting to hear what someone has to say, they instantly start shooting down what they're saying and oh, you didn't see that. That's what annoys me with most people is
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the instant you didn't see what you saw. Well, how do you know? Were you there?
yeah. I find that completely patronizing and frankly very insulting that people could kind of just weigh in so casually with those with those kind of comments. I mean, I'm sure that's part of the keyboard culture, right? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of that is just people typing comments on whatever venues they're on. But I do think that is I mean, it's interesting. Like I've had a number of interviews, for this book, and it was interesting. I have to admit, I was a little bit nervous to start kind of talking about it and talking about what I believed, because I didn't know what the reaction would be from friends, from colleagues, from all of that. By and large, it's been really, really very a wonderful experience, and a lot of people have been really kind of affirming and kind of wanted to engage and talk about it and discuss it more. So it's actually been really kind of a liberating experience. But I had to admit I was a little bit nervous because of that, exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's the society we live in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we've been going on for close to an hour. I try and keep them around an hour. So before we wrap this up, I would like for you to let everyone know where they can find your book.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I always tell people, if you've got a local bookstore, I always, want people to support local businesses. They should have it in stock right now since it was just released. They probably have it on their front table or front shelves. If not, they can get it for you real quick. Otherwise, if you don't got a bookstore near you, it's available on all the big retailers, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I'm happy wherever you get it from, and I hope people really enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, Giano, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, Brandon, thanks so much for having me on. This has been a real treat. I've enjoyed it a lot.
Not a problem. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Take care.
If you'd like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com or go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Make sure to follow me around on all the social medias. And just remember, Truth comes at a cost. Are you willing to pay the price?
I heard a story late last night about something lurking along the wood line. Huge footprints, strange lights in the sky. They claim it's nothing, but I know they lie. It's easier to laugh in my face, but something about this makes me say, what if it's real? What if they knew? What if the answers are coming from you? Spinning stories, wasting my time, hearing voices, is it all in their minds? They can call me crazy, but I just want some proof. What if it's true? What if it's real? What if it's true? What if the world's not what we knew? Tinfoil tales pulling me in, a story that starts where the logic ends. What if it's real? What if it's true? The answers are waiting, they're waiting for you. They see a dog man walking, or maybe a mothman flies above the buried giants, hidden beneath the lies. They say it's just stories, it's all make-believe. Fairy tales for the things we can't perceive. They want to keep us blinded, they want to break our will. But I'm not buying it, I'm not swallowing another pill. Force-fed poison, the lies we're made to believe. What if the truth could set us free? Alien signals traveling through time, secret space programs erasing their minds. They call them crazy, but I just need some proof. What if it's true? What if it's real? What if it's true? What if the world's not what we knew? Tinfoil tales pulling me in, a story that starts where the logic ends. What if it's real? What if it's true? The answers are waiting, they're waiting for you. They laugh, they lie, we all could die, but the signs are there if you open your eyes. Aliens, cryptids, demons, ghosts, the Nephilim too. What if it's me? Or what if it's real? What if it's real? What if it's true? What if the world's not what we knew? Tinfoil tales pulling me in, a story that starts where the logic ends. What if it's real? What if it's true? The answers are waiting, they're waiting for you. It's all in our heads, it's all in our minds. These voices can't be silenced, the truth must rise. Tinfoil tales, it's pulling me through. What if it's real? What if it's true?